Time for a new twist on an old classic, a sports car driven by a secret agent. Just like Crimson Fury from Twisted Metal 1, but this time around, it's called Orbital.
I am not seeking revenge. All I want is to be like everyone else. I just want to be able to lead a normal life like the next man.
Wow, this Sean Connery impression actually has an understandable predicament and a reasonable goal. You actually kind of want him to win. He was mutilated by a supervillain in the pursuit of saving the world. Now just wants to undo that injustice. I'm actually rooting for him. Is this even Twisted Metal 4? Anyway, beneath the drill is a crude and black treasure, but above are riches beyond measure. We'll have to get above the oil drill here on the oil rig. This, I gotta say, is a pretty interesting choice for a location to set a level. Doesn't make any thematic sense for this game, but if it did at this point, I would be disturbed. No two levels in this game are permitted to equate to one another. So the fact that this is vaguely similar to the construction yard is mildly disturbing. And if there had been a Twisted Metal Harbor City, as was the planned sequel to Black, an oil rig would have been a perfect place to set a level in that game as well. So as an idea, I think this is really cool. But as an actual level that I have to drive around in, it is not my favorite. Mostly because a very large portion of it is these long, winding corridors, which are unsuitable for combat. Which means most of the time spent in this level will be on the central platform where we started. Just ahead of me here, this region. This is the ideal place to do all your combat. And it is excellent for fighting the enemies, and they do love to come here. But there are no pickups on this platform. There are ramps attached, which lead to nearby areas that have a handful of pickups available. And I believe there is one homing missile pickup underneath one of the ramps. But otherwise, anytime you run out of ammunition, you'll have to go trick-or-treating through one of those narrow corridors. Then you can bring your treats back to this combat platform, as we'll call it, and put them to good use. But the time you spend looking for pickups is effectively entirely wasted. Enemies will not be taking any damage for the entire duration. It so happens that Orbital's special is one of the few things that actually can lock an opponent down for long enough that you can do a little bit of damage while they're on these lower platforms and narrow alleyways. And Orbital is also extremely fast, so if an enemy does try to run away from you down here, they will probably be outpaced pretty quickly. So this vehicle is especially well suited to this level, and it's still going to take an excruciatingly long time. There's simply no way around it. This would be an inherent design flaw with any execution on the oil rig idea as a level, because oil rigs actually do have very narrow pathways with guarded rails so you don't go over the edge of any of those paths, keep you locked in on the exact routes that you are intended to take. But it's mostly a problem with the controls here in Twisted Metal 4, which make it very difficult to land shots on enemies that are sneaking through narrow areas. They can quickly dart around a corner, and then your shots are gonna miss. The Twisted Metal Black engine would hypothetically be able to do this idea justice in a way that the Twisted Metal 4 engine simply cannot. And they could have just put some pickups on that combat platform, but they would have quickly dried up anyway. We'd be right back where we are right now. Would have been as ineffective as putting a band-aid on Orbital's gaping exposed skull. And Orbital is the name of the driver, by the way. Every vehicle in this game is named for the driver. The vehicle itself goes either unnamed or the name is inconsequential, which is kind of a strange choice in a vehicular combat game. Every other game in the series, the vehicle is the star, but this time, the usually very generic driver gets the namesake. At the moment, we are well stocked on arms, so we get to engage in a brief, glorious moment of violence. But we are going to have to guard that shed right over there that has the teleporter inside. We'll see why in a second here. The other side of that teleporter is the area that leads to the helipad. AI in this level will go for the health pickup when it's available, with the same tenacity that they would have in Twisted Metal 3. So we have to guard that health pickup with our lives. And that, by the way, is the only health pickup in this level, which makes it very easy to guard. But it does respawn very quickly and on a very predictable cycle. We'll see why that is the case later in this video. Now over here off the combat platform is this closet, which would be a perfect place to drop some pickups, but they simply don't spawn here. It is an empty closet that exists for no reason as far as I can tell. And it's also a bad place to do combat. Notably, there is a very similar enclosed structure directly above that closet, which does have several useful pickups in it, including those proximity mines that I just laid everywhere. So it is easy to get confused. I get confused very frequently when trying to wander around this level. Over here we have a bounce pad, which I initially thought was the secret for the level that the loading screen alluded to. Something about rising above the oil drill for treasures or something. One of the few loading screen hints actually written in rhyme. Not sure why Sweet Tooth was inconsistent about that. Here's the upper closet that actually does have some pickups. But what we really want is to platform on top of this shed, which is the one we guarded earlier to keep Meter Maid from using the teleporter. On top of it is another teleporter, which leads us to the actual secret. Now we are on top of the oil drill. And that's where we get the environmental pickup, which as usual is a lightning bolt. What it does is it covers the entire combat platform, and the platform directly underneath the combat platform. Hits everybody, does a lot of damage. Did about half of Quattro's health right there. Extremely, extremely useful. Probably should have started by going to get that thing. Might have sped this playthrough up quite a bit. And while I was distracted getting it, I did lose track of Warthog. He got away and got the health refill. So he's back to full. We're gonna have to dump our entire payload to bring him back down to where he was. And eventually kill him. You saw from playing as him, he has way too much health. But hitting him with everything we got brought him down to critical health. And soon, we should be able to finish him off. Surprisingly, one power missile didn't do it, but the second one did. That's not going to be much of a relief though, because this level has two bosses, Super Augur and Super Slam. Effectively, that amounts to about 4 times as much HP as General Warthog. We just spent basically our entire inventory taken down. So we are going to have to wander around for quite a bit to restock before we even attempt to take down the construction yard tag team of death. So now would be a good time to try and figure out the unique mechanics that are present on this level's helipad. We hop over there, we get the health refill necessary before we do any boss fighting. Then we can just hang out, aided by getting frozen by one of the bosses. The helicopter passes by and stops at the helipad to drop off the health refill. So every time the helicopter passes that point in its orbit, the health refill is restocked, resulting in many, many opportunities to refill your health in this level. Now this, in practice, is very, very similar to the helicopters introduced in Twisted Metal Black, which would patrol specific points in every level and usually carry things like health refills or machine gun upgrades, other various things, but primarily health refills. Black also adopted this game's idea of using locational archetypes for its levels, like a junkyard and freeway, unlike previous Twisted Metals, which all used specific real-world locations for all the levels. And furthermore, this was the first game in the series where turbo is activated by double-tapping the accelerator button rather than using a dedicated turbo button. And that control scheme was also used in Twisted Metal Black and has been the series standard ever since. And it's worth noting, Twisted Metal Black came out only a year and a half or so after Twisted Metal 4. A surprisingly short gap. I honestly thought the series had taken a pretty long hiatus after this game. But no, it was a smaller gap than even the one between Twisted Metal 2 and 3. Black and 4 ended up having quite a lot in common, and I wouldn't be surprised if that weren't mere coincidence. And if nothing else, it helps to explain why I like Twisted Metal 4 so much. Now we are technically in the middle of a boss fight, but it's a very, very boring boss fight. Mr. Slam is possibly identical to Crusher from the first level. If there is any functional difference, I cannot detect it. And Augur is effectively identical to Mr. Slam, except that the special spins you around instead of lifting you up. And that is it. I have nothing to say about them that I didn't say in the first video. So let's finally talk about the music, which you may not even have heard throughout this entire video. It's another licensed track. The band is 1 Minute Silence, and the song is called And Some You Lose. It's another track with a 25-second long, almost inaudible intro that they did not cut out. But what they did cut out of this version of the song is all of the vocals. It is an instrumental, but it was not recorded as such, and I don't know why they made the decision to remove the vocals. My best guess is that the song has a lot of profanity in it, and they did censor out profanity from the Cypress Hill song, but that song probably had a censored version just lying around for sale at Walmarts, whereas 1 Minute Silence is a very obscure, generic nu metal band who never really made it, sorta like Ghoulspoon. Unlike Ghoulspoon, however, 1 Minute Silence is comprised of very outspoken anarchists who occasionally work those political beliefs into their, I cannot stress this enough, unbelievably derivative nu metal music. You can actually hear them chug through some West Borland wannabe riffs on the game's title screen, which features another song of theirs called A More Violent Approach, which also was recorded with vocals. Same deal with the game's intro, where there's a part where it breaks out into distorted guitars. That would be a song by them called South Central. So 1 Minute Silence is effectively Twisted Metal 4's house band. They're just lucky that what they do sounds like video game background music when you strip out the potty mouth. And I unironically love it. I make no bones about being the nu metal apologist. So this is an excellent track, as are all of the songs that they chose for this game. I just wish the audio was mixed better so I could actually hear it. Here I was worried that Augur was camping the health respawn point, trying to get it as soon as it landed, but when it did land, he just drove off the edge, ran away from the health refill. Lucky me. But he did seem stuck on the edge and probably wouldn't have been able to get it anyway. Now he's just gonna freeze me and stare at me threateningly, which isn't gonna work, so I immediately respond by blowing him up. Now we're finally free of the oil rig. And this happens to be the only level in the game with death pits in it. So I can celebrate by leaping over the safety railings to my death. Now, despite that death, we get our ending. Good luck, Orbital.
Orbital! You've won the Twisted Metal contest! So, what is it you desire?
After what the evil Dr. Roma did to me with his deadly biochemical weapon classified as Zytox 4, all I want now is to no longer be an outcast.
An outcast?
I just want to be normal again. I don't want to be the only one on the planet with only half a face.
Your wish has been granted, driver! Some people are just normally sad, it seems.
I guess that was meant to be an ironic punishment, but if not for Melvin the Clown's narration line, I would have assumed that was a tear of joy from Orbital, at the fact that he is now societally acceptable. Really good ending, could have come right out of Twisted Metal 2, maybe even makes up for the last one we saw. And the depiction of everyone's mutilated faces is actually really disturbing, probably about as gruesome as they could have gotten away with in a T-rated game. Back to the title screen, where we get to enjoy more 1-minute silence, and come to our bonus level, Tic Tac Toast. We fought 2 bosses this time, and they are both playable, but the first one I stumbled upon in the character select screen was Super Slam. So we will take him to our new bonus level. Just remember this, up, up, down, down. That's the input for the hyperspace energy move, which is very foreboding. And if you look at the level preview, the entire thing is red, which indicates destructible floors. We are going to have to tread very lightly, but all the pickups are resistant to us doing so. Bunch of remote bombs, proximity mines, napalms, everything designed to destroy the floor and cause us to get in an infinite loop of falling into the pit, trying to hyperspace out, only to land on no ground once again. Fortunately, the enemies also get stuck in that loop. This level can only last a few seconds, no matter how many enemies you bring here. And all the enemies ran out of their hyperspaces. Calypso simply could not escape. His energy bar was effectively too empty. So that was so ridiculously fast. Let's play that level again. See what happens the second time. Because this is a very silly gimmick. We could go through a dozen loops of this level in the time it takes me to complete one of the normal levels. Just for little amusement. If you use the shield here, your chrome is all red. I guess it's reflecting the bright red level around us. And just watch the enemies desperately circle the bowl. Try and get out, but it is impossible. There simply is no ground for them. Right there, I accidentally used the invisibility, which is down, down, up, up. I guess I tried to use the hyperspace, didn't register because one of the inputs was wrong, and then when I tried to use it again, it registered as a invisibility instead. But even though I wasn't in the level, the final enemy also managed to kill themselves. Which effectively means we won, even though we lost. Very silly conclusion, but we've seen what Super Slam is like anyway when we played as Crusher. That's another level down, and we saw that the next will be Minions Maze. If not for the next level, the oil rig would be my least favorite in the game. See you next time for an interesting but arduous experience.